Mario Kart World might as well be an inevitability. After Mario Kart 8 Deluxe became an almost mandatory purchase for the Nintendo Switch, we're almost pretty much guaranteed that Mario Kart World is going to have the exact same position for the Switch 2 and be the system's best-selling game. And there's probably going to be some good reasons for that. There's some big, bold new ideas that will look to make this feel like a true new generation of kart racer, whether it's the jump to open world, the increased player counts to 24 racers, or the new Knockout Tour elimination mode. With the Nintendo Switch 2 launching later this week, we've been able to spend a few hours with Mario Kart World at a preview event ahead of time. That's let us dip into that Knockout Tour elimination mode, a bunch of the new standard tracks, mess around with the many characters in the game, and, of course, explore the open world and its P-button challenges. There's some great touches throughout the game, and it's clear that while Nintendo originally considered trying to get this game and its open world vision to work on the original Switch, they pushed on in what they were trying to do when they shifted focus to the Nintendo Switch 2. So there's some key things like being able to shift seamlessly from the main menu into driving around in the open world. There's no loading screens, you just start driving from wherever the camera is pointing. And there's a minimap that is much more like a bird's eye view camera of the world instead of an outline map. More fundamentally, there's core technologies, such as where the water sections have got wave simulations that roll through the large bodies of water that, while we've absolutely seen this kind of wave tech before, famously all the way back with Wave Race 64, it can be taxing computationally, and to feature this while also doing the open world and the fast multiplayer racing with large lobbies, it probably would have pushed the Nintendo Switch to its absolute limits. Yes, this probably could have all worked on the original Switch, but not when pushing 60 FPS, or absolutely not when pushing 4-player local split screen. Of course, it's really the core Mario Kart racing that matters the most here, and there's that immediate familiarity that you'll feel in nailing that boost start timing and setting off to drift through corners and fling items at your rivals. It's Mario Kart through and through, but it's also a little bit different in ways that can challenge your muscle memory. In particular, there's the new wall riding and rail guiding additions that add new tricks to the side of tracks and areas. At the same time, the hover kart mode falling by the wayside in favour of transforming vehicles to let that happen, which now means that you ride on top of the water instead of driving straight into it. The tricky thing that you'll need to master though is that you can't just drive at and do a little hop at a rail in order to start grinding on it. Instead, you need to hold the right shoulder button with no directional inputs at all and charge it up. Any directional movement alongside that will still hop into a drift. And this takes time, thought and effort to get this just right after so many games of learning that previous behaviour. For the most part, these additional movement types are a bit of a nice extra. Grinding on the rail doesn't inherently increase your speed, but it does give you the opportunity to trick and gain mini boosts for a marginal advantage, although at the same time you will be grinding on a rail while other people will be drifting and boosting through a corner themselves. And it does seem that if the grind rails are ever the primary route through an area, then there's always a secondary drop down area below them for you to fall back on. The jump across to the open world has brought other big changes to the game. There's all of these racetracks dotted across the world, some new, some returning, and they can all be raced in a traditional fashion. Or, alternatively, you can race between them, starting at one track, driving to the next one, and then continuing your race around that track to reach the finish line. In the Grand Prix Cups, the first race is always at a track, but each race after that starts at the previous circuit and then races to the next track and then finishes off with one or a few laps of it. It's a huge change, and it turns the point-to-point races that were a rare highlight of previous games into being pretty much the main event of Mario Kart World. And that's before you consider the Knockout Tour, which joins up the open world roads through a bunch of circuits, always knocking out the last 4 racers at each checkpoint and building up the pressure section by section until you're into that final 4. And so the game does have this odd blend of those bespoke circuits that can be tight and twisty, lean in on certain ideas and themes, but then they're joined up by these big, broad roadways. There's huge banks of item boxes that are pretty much impossible to miss. There's all of these long straights and relatively gentle twisting sections that provide minimal challenge, but that doesn't necessarily make them boring to drive. After all, there's always the chaos of items coming your way, and there's road traffic that comes with ramps, has got hammer bros flinging hammers off the back of trucks, and more. It could also be the wide open sea that you sail across, bouncing over waves and having you constantly tricking as you jump over every single lip to get every single advantage that you can. The open world is, of course, completely open for you to explore at your leisure, whether you're playing solo or when you're waiting for your lobby of friends to fill up and the host to select the particular game mode and track and the various permutations. It is interesting to see how Nintendo has tried to fill in the blank areas with P buttons, giving mini-missions and challenges that test your driving skills. You'll race around and collect blue coins, you'll whiz through checkpoints, trying to link together rail grinds, jumps and more with perfect timing to reach the finishing line. And you basically know what to expect from these kinds of challenges. The handful that I saw weren't exactly mind-blowing, but they're going to be fun to find and test yourselves against to complete them, and they can really scratch that itch that all of the high score and skill check challenges always do in games. And I almost feel that Nintendo is having to embrace some of the kind of quirky messiness that open world races can always have. There's always going to be boring patches of the world, there's going to be these weird endpoints, such as a pipe at the end of a sky road that just spits you back out to go the other way. And you've got the ability to just fling yourself off into areas that aren't really intended for you to drive across and visit. So Nintendo has kind of just rolled with this idea in other areas, which you can see most readily in the character list. Pretty much all of the main characters that you can think of from the Mario games are here, and they've been lavished with love. They've been given multiple costume variants for you to find, and you've got all of the animations and the care and attention to detail that you would expect. And then there's the sensation and delight of having Cow be a playable character, who's got these adorable little animations while jumping that have made her an immediate fan favourite. But then there's also the kind of third tier, let's say, with characters here that they just don't make that much sense. How can Sidestepper drive, for example? This giant-eyed crab just sits in a car with both claws up in the air, and it's revealed to then have just feet dangling off the sides if you choose to drive on a bike. And then you've got Fishbone, which has even less contact between its fishy skeleton and your chosen vehicle. I actually do love that they're here though, and they are kind of hilarious to see in the character select screen, but they do also feel a little bit like Nintendo gave in to the concept. This is both a bold new direction for the series and one that remains relatively familiar. You can still race around tracks if you wish, selecting them manually and even creating your own bespoke point-to-point races that you won't see within the main Grand Prix or Knockout Tour mode. And there's also Battle Mode, which has got the usual mix of bespoke arenas and repurposed track sections to race and fight through. This is also a lot of fun in split screen, and if you have a Switch 2 camera set up and everybody's mug is on screen to highlight who your human rivals are, then the competitiveness that everyone feels when playing Mario Kart absolutely shines through. On first impressions then, it's maybe not quite as refined as the very focused Mario Kart 8, but we won't have too long to wait before we see how all of this comes together. Mario Kart World is out in just 2 days alongside the Nintendo Switch 2 and is bound to be pretty much the first game that almost anyone that buys this console is going to play, maybe even the only game that they bother with for the first few months. That's all that we've got for our preview, but we will be back with our review in due course. Make sure to like, subscribe, click the bell icon to get the notifications on YouTube, and hopefully we will see you again soon for that. Goodbye!